so my family was in the, my dad's family was in the mob, went to jail. My uncles went to jail. My uncle robbed his own bank, his local bank, went into the bank with a gun, and they were like, "Lou, what are you doing? Like, we know you. We
Sorry,
can
that's
identify you."
I'm sorry. This is a sitcom. I'm sure you've developed this already, right?
Welcome to Third and Fairfax, the official podcast of the Writers Guild of America West. I'm your host, Brian Gary. In this episode, Monique Sorgen talks with showrunner and executive producer Michelle Nader about her two current comedy series, Shifting Gears and Deli Boys, how personal experience shapes her work, and always much more. Listen and subscribe to Third and Fairfax on Spotify, Apple, and Libsyn, and watch us on the Writers Guild of America West's YouTube channel. And now, here's Monique in conversation with Michelle.
Welcome back to Third and Fairfax. I am Monique Sorgen, and I'm here today with Michelle Nader. She is an incredibly prolific comedy writer who has been making some of my favorite shows since, most of my adult life, and currently is a showrunner on not one, but two new series. One is called Shifting Gears, which stars Tim Allen and Kat Denning. And you can tell us about that. And the other is
Kat Dennings.
Kat Dennings, yeah.
I've been
And
with her for many years, so I'm often, people are always calling her the one. She's two Dennings.
she's multiple Dennings. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad we cleared that up because now I will never forget it again. And Michelle also has another show called Deli Boys, which is going to be airing on Onyx. And really, I've watched all of Deli Boys and some of Shifting Gears, and this is very exciting for me, is all I will say. So, Michelle, before we get into that, what I really like to know about you is how did you end up in this business?
Right, I know. Well, it was a millennium ago, and I kind of got into the TV business randomly, kind of as a lark, because I had been an entertainment reporter, and then I was on sets, kind of visiting TV sets, because I was working at like Entertainment Weekly and something called the Cable Guide when cable started, burgeoning out. That it was like TV Guide and Cable Guide. And so I was on these sets, and I started to think, well, I'm reporting about these shows. I could do that. I could do the actual writing. And so it got planted in my mind. And then I did I was living in New York at the time, and I did some documentaries. And I was like, I don't really like reality. I really like fiction, and I like making up stories. So I had a terrible
What do
breakup.
you mean though by you did documentaries? You directed them,
I
you
I
wrote
uh,
them, you
I
produced
was
them?
producing documentaries. Like I did a couple of South Bank shows, and we were doing. I was with this company that was doing this documentary for the BBC and HBO, and where we lived in a crack house in New York, in Harlem.
You lived in a crack house.
I visited a crack house
Okay.
every night. I never did any crack, though it was a really obviously
Congratulations on
intense.
that.
Yes, I know it was not even tempting, by the way. But I really kind of thought like this was, it was that was certainly a dark documentary, and I love watching documentaries, but I just didn't have the fortitude to like spend 7 years in a crack house and then have this show come out. And I wanted to, and even now I like kind of building from nothing, and kind of changing, going from nothing to something is really incredible, and it's an incredible power. And I guess it's sort of like why writers do it. Like, you want to control things, you want to control the narrative. And So
Which is so ironic because in the end, in this business, writers end up controlling pretty much nothing
yeah.
a
Oh,
lot of the time. Like everyone else comes in and tells you exactly how it's going to be. But
believe
yes.
me, I know. Trust me. But the initial kind of the purest part of us is trying to tell stories that are gonna make people feel better, or some version of that. And so I um, had a breakup, came to LA, knowing no one, and somebody asked me at a spinning class. Remember, this is when spinning first started. This is how, honestly, how ancient I am. That this was in the 90s. It's not that bad, but it wasn't like Sid Caesar or anything. Um, she said, "Do you want to write a spec comedy for Friends?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." And we did that, and we got a job. It was like at the time when they really wanted women in TV, because it was really, especially comedy, it was a very male dominated. Not that it's not still male dominated, but really, really wanted the kind of token women on the staff. And so we
I
got a
do
job
not
on.
remember that time ever.
It was, I know, I know. It might have just been a week, and I caught it
It might
during
have
that week.
Okay, because I was one of my big questions was like, as a woman at the time, like when I started out and was trying to break into comedy writing, like I was told to my face, well, everyone knows women aren't funny, or like, oh, this room isn't really female friendly, and it was just like kind of a thing that was known that you just didn't have women on most staffs. I knew one team of women who were working, and I think because they were sharing a salary. And so is that what happened with
Yeah,
you?
we
Was
shared
you
a salary too.
sharing with
Yeah,
another? Okay, I didn't realize when you started you had a female partner, so it was like two
yeah.
for the
Amy
price of one.
Cohen was my partner. She got me into it. So that was the kind of my entree into it. And it was, again, like I said, it was after a breakup, as a lark. Somebody asked me to do something, and it, like I said, it had been planted in my head. But I have to say this part, or else my friend, one of my best friends, Bruce Eric Kaplan, will kill me, because this really was the thing. When I moved here, we went for a walk. We used to walk. I lived in West Hollywood, and we used to walk to this place called the Newsroom, a really long walk, and we just talk about everything. And I said, "Well, I don't know if I could do it." And he said, "Watch this show." And I think he's going to kill me, because I always think it's sports night, but it was like, maybe it could have been Let's Just Shoot Me, or something. It was something like that. It was a show on at the time, and we watched it together. And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. So he kind of was the final, sign that I should do this. And then we wrote a spec, and a friend spec, and we got into it. We
And
got
so,
jobs.
okay, and your first job was on.
Caroline in the City.
Okay, so the Friends spec got you the Caroline in the City.
Yes.
But, like, how did you get your script even to anyone at that
Okay, so
time?
that's the other weird thing, which was that my friend, again, knew no one in Los Angeles, like wasn't plugged in any way. Amy Cohen knew somebody, it's like that, it's still like that, like knew somebody that was an assistant somewhere. But then out of nowhere, Ted Chervin, who is my longtime agent now, and when I started in 95 and 96, he's been my agent since then. Laura Gordon is also my current agent, who is, an incredible woman, and I love having a female agent. But at the time, there weren't a lot of female agents either. So Ted was moving to LA, because we were all in our 20s, right? So everybody was moving around and figuring out what they wanted to do. And so when I moved out here, I knew no one. And then another friend of mine said her friend, Ted Chervin, was moving out here, and he was a prosecutor in New York, and he was coming out and leaving that all behind. Like, he went to like Harvard, and he wanted to be an agent. And I was like, okay. But then I knew him, and so we sent him our script, but he was not even an agent. He was an assistant. and on someone's desk, and we sent him the script, and he had so many notes. Like he was like the A story, like he was so smart, and he was so he still is the most honest person to a fault. And I'm always like, Ted, can you agent me at like ever? Can you just lie and like gas me up a little? And he's like, nope, can't do it. So anyway, he gave us all these notes, and they wound up being really great notes. And then we sent it out, but it was like, a nail biter, because as I told you, it was like the week that they were hiring women. It was like when they hired people in May or whenever like shows got picked up, and there's like this frenzy for 2 weeks. I don't think that happens anymore as much, obviously, but then it was really a thing. So we got a job. We met Fred Barron and Marco Panette. Marco Panette, still a good friend of mine. And, so we got a job. And I don't know if you have more questions, but I can tell you that first job was so frightening, because it was like 14 guys that had been doing this forever, and they were, older. And I developed a twitch in my eye because I was so nervous and I didn't know how to talk. But I eventually.
Does your partner talk a lot though, or at all? No, so neither one of you, because I kind of feel like when you're two, then you get half the talking time already anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
No. They pretty much exiled us out of the room most of the time. Like there would be like, just go somewhere else and think of story ideas. But it really, then I realized like, oh, this is do or die. Like I have to like step it up. And I will say that my background in South Philadelphia, like even around my own table, I come from an Italian Lebanese background. My uncles were very funny, and I knew from then that, because they would make jokes about, at other people's expense, like just like a comedy room and guys in a comedy room. And I knew that if I didn't make the joke, I was going to be the joke, like my other cousins. And so I started to figure out, oh, I need to do that. And then I kind of, I started to figure out how to formulate a joke and how to speak in a way that they could hear, because it's a language at a table. I'm sure I don't know if you did comedy or drama, but you just have to immerse yourself in the language of it to even participate.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. How long did it take you to get there?
It took me getting fired from that show to and then going to Spin City to know, oh, okay. First of all, those guys were much older. And then when we went to Spin City, they were all our age. It was Bill Lawrence running the show. And it was a bunch of, basically it was all staff writers. And so we kind of learned together, and I learned how to, sort of play ball. I mean, they literally played ball during the day. Like they would go off and play basketball for 4 hours. But I, in that time, figured it out, and they would separate me and Amy. So we would have 2 different rooms. And so I had to figure it out on my own,
Okay.
And again, they still thought, and I love a lot of these guys. I'm still friends with them. But they really, even then, thought we were story people and not joke people. And then
because women aren't funny.
No,
right.
Women aren't funny. You're here. So what would Nikki say? Like the Connie Britton character, or what like a pipey line, right? And like she would have a lot more to say, and she's just as funny as everybody else. I mean, she's not Michael J. Fox, of course, but anyway, so I just learned how to formulate jokes and also tell stories. And that was and then, we were there for 3 years. And then I
loved Spin City.
Yeah, it was a great show. We didn't know Michael was sick though at the time. So it was
I think he found out later. I mean, if you came at the beginning of that, I watched the doc on him. I mean, everything he touches is gold. He's just so good.
you
It's
know.
so inspiring to see someone deliver words that way.
No, I know.
You know?
No, I mean, I felt so lucky to be there and just to be on a sitcom in New York, you know, because that's where I lived and, you know, had lived and I moved to LA, you know, just to get out of New York, but I loved New York. And so we, you know, we kind of, you know, really I got my kind of, it was trial by fire, but I certainly learned how to participate, to, you know, score and like, you know, be an integral part, what it took to be an integral part of a staff, you know.
Yeah. You know, I mean, you mentioned like, I don't know if people want to hear what it was like on Friends with the older guys, but if you do have more to say, I do think that would be something that would be interesting to people. Just and also like, how has it evolved since then? And do you feel like the addition of more women to the rooms or more people of color to the rooms has like changed the dynamic in any way, or is it the same with just women and people of color as well? You know, kind of. Uh, being biting and you know
Yeah.
if you're not
It's still, I
making
mean,
jokes.
comedy writers are always going to be, you know, it's a tough, I've never been in a drama room, but a comedy room is a tougher room because everyone is so fast and everybody just wants to be funny. So they're going to make jokes and it's, you know, a lot of it is, you know, it's insult comedy a lot of time. But what I've, you know, what I have developed since, you know, when I started, you know, being in charge, which, you know, didn't really happen. I mean, I kind of started running rooms uh, at Spin City because I was, you know, kind of, well, not the Spin City that was in New York. I left that show um, and I left my partner then. I went to Dorman and Greg,
Mhm.
came back to LA to do, and this is sort of like now the timeline. But it really does, it parallels my sort of experience and my kind of, uh, my levels at shows. So I went to Darman Greg. That was a Chuck Lorre show. That was difficult for me because it was a show that I really, that wasn't really my voice. I was sort of that it didn't, and they room wrote everything, and you know, Chuck is notoriously, you know, difficult, and so then I didn't stay on that show. Spin City came back to LA with Charlie Sheen, and Gary Goldberg took over again. And I went back on that show. And that's where I was really an elder statesman. Like I kind of had, you know, I'd been there from the beginning and I started running rooms. Even I wasn't the showrunner. I think Tom Hertz was the showrunner. Um, but I really ran rooms and I ran the sort of intellectual, you know, property of the show, like the stories and the you know, I started doing all the clothes. You know, I dealt with other departments because they were, again, I was a woman and they were like, well, you do the production design, you do the styling, you do the, I did that a little bit in New York with Patricia Field. I hired her for you know, for as a costume designer for that show. But so I started to learn how to run a show before I mean, this is why it's so unfortunate now that, you know, there aren't so many shows and, you know, especially in streaming, you know, writers don't get to go through production. And so they don't get to see every part of the process. And they can't, you know, you need 10,000, you need 20,000 hours to know how to do this. It's difficult and it's you know, you can only learn by doing and getting imprinted on you what has to happen in terms of dealing with actors and executives and, you know, the stories and just all the other departments, the crew and directors, you know, that is, it's a very specific I think um, expertise, and I think you can't learn it except by doing it.
Yeah. And so how do you think that's being handled now?
It's not like I try to, you know, so I'm in the in both worlds, right? I have Deli Boys is a streaming show for Onyx for Hulu. And so that was, we do it a certain way. We do 20 weeks of pre-production and then we go into production. The writers generally don't come into that world. We shot in Chicago. We actually brought a couple of the writers who they were just in the show, as actors as well, because became a very big, like, Ocean's 11 kind of a family. But I think that and I worked with Jenny Connor. She was the executive producer on it, and she believes the same because she grew up in the business as I did, and she would said we need to let the writers, the staff writers, and the sort of newer writers in on notes calls and in on as much of the process as we could in pre-production. And I think that's what we're trying to do is give people, be mentors to younger writers so that they know what they're doing in the time. Because I mean, the truth is that the reason I have 2 shows now is because I have come on to showrun them because Abdullah Saeed created the show, a genius. But he had never run a show, so they needed a showrunner, which is great for me. But ultimately, I want him to, and he will, and run a show. I did it with Jordan Weiss on Dollface. Mm-hmm. She's incredible, but was 26 years old and wrote this great show, but they wouldn't let her run it, right? So I came in on the 2nd season. And now she's tearing it up, and she's gonna run. Right. She's gonna run Hollywood, but yeah, she's incredible.
Yeah. I actually interviewed her on this podcast when you guys were doing Dollface as well.
She's so great.
So she's great. Yeah.
So, but then so that's like the the sort of streaming experience. And now I'm doing Shifting Gears, which is a really traditional network sitcom, right? And so we do it the old-fashioned way, which is we do our pre-production and then everybody stays on through producing all of the episodes. We did 10 episodes, so I think that's a better system. I think that the younger writers or people that haven't done this, and I hired a lot of vets, but I also hired some new faces. Faraz Ozel is also was on Deli Boys and on is on Shifting Gears, and both times it was his first show. And I think he's seen how different it is, how different the forms are and also the process.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's also different because Shifting Gears is a multicam show and Deli Boys is a single cam show. So even if you do get to have that traditional experience of going down to set for the multicam and pitching jokes on show night and all that stuff, it's a completely different experience than what you would be doing if you were on a single camera show. So it's like, great, those people are trained to do multicam. That's wonderful. But who's getting trained to do single cam? And that's really interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway, so while we're talking about these shows, so we should also talk about what the shows are. So yeah. Do you want to talk about one first or both at the same time, and do a comparison, contrast, whatever? What do you think?
Well, I'll talk about Deli Boys first because we just came back from Sundance where we were doing a sort of a promotion for the show. We didn't screen it yet. That's in a couple of weeks. It premieres on Hulu on March 6th. And I love this show so much. Deli Boys is created by Abdullah Saeed, who is an incredible, brilliant writer. He worked on Vice. I don't know if you're familiar with Bong Appetit, but he used to smoke a lot of pot and then eat food on on this podcast on a show for Vice. And this
that all comes out in Deli Boys. You can see that. You can see that background.
You totally can see his 10,000 hours of weed, for sure. But he's so bright. He's great at music too. So I mean, just this script. I read the script. Jenny was executive produced it. Found this script, and they had shot the pilot, and then they needed a showrunner, and so that's why they brought me in. And when I
Why
read
did
this,
why didn't Jenny showrun it? Was she just like moving?
Jenny is doing she's kind of now kind of trying to do a bunch of things at the same time. So she can't really kind of get in the weeds with something. So that's why they brought me in. I mean, she was involved creatively in it, but needed a, day-to-day showrunner. So, that was fortunately my role. Um, so but the show essentially, and when I read the script, I thought this is a great script. And when you read great scripts, like that's they really sing. And it was just like novelistic in the way he described these characters and the world. And it was set in Philadelphia, and it's about these two Pakistani brothers whose dad is this, what they think is a corporate magnate. And actually he runs a drug, it's basically a drug front because he's a cocaine dealer. And they get kind of shoved into this underworld of kicking and screaming. And so it's a comedy about them being fish out of water in this crime world, underworld in Philadelphia. Purna Jagannathan, I think you guys, people would know her from Never Have I Ever and Night Of. She's an incredible actress, and she plays their
So
auntie.
good in this. Oh my God.
Isn't she amazing in it?
She's gonna win Emmys. I mean,
I think so.
I think the show is gonna be an Emmy contender next year. I mean, it's like, I mean, look, from my lips to God's ears, as
Yeah.
they say, but like I don't know anything. No one knows anything, but like I watched it and the whole time I was like, this is the kind of show people talk about. This is the kind of show where people like feel like they found something and they're in the know now. So I think it's going to be huge.
Oh my God.
That's my
I think so too. But you get so close to something, but when we
Well,
see it,
I'm not close to it. I just binged it straight through and it was like funny, but also gory, but also like kind of violent, but in a really fun way. It reminded me of The Boys a little bit in
oh,
the way the violence was portrayed, where
right,
it's like, doesn't like I'm not someone who can watch horror movies. Like I can't
right,
watch anything that looks realistic violent
right.
because I can't unsee it and I'll have nightmares. But like I watch The Boys and I can watch this kind of violence where it's just like kind of funny and there's like tons of blood in every episode, but it's not about that. It's really about like these relationships with these brothers and their auntie who is hilarious. And this woman, to see this woman in this powerful position was so inspiring to me. And it's
And
just
kicking
like,
ass, like
and
kicking major
kicking
ass.
ass, just like intellectual ass, physical ass, like she's just like, taking names,
Oh
but
yeah.
she's incredible
Oh,
in it. I
and
mean,
her clothes. How about her clothes? Come on.
yeah, she looks great.
No,
She's just like, because I knew her from Never Have I Ever too,
right,
where she's
right.
just like a nice mom and she was good, but I didn't know she was that good,
No, I know.
But
She is.
also the directing, the cinematography, it's all great. It's like the whole package. I was
Please, can you come everywhere and say these things? Because I really think that, and I think people are going to, like you, feel like this is something special because we
Yeah,
felt
I can't wait for season 2.
yeah, me either.
Like, I'm the only one who's watched it, and I can't wait for season 2,
Yeah,
you know?
it really is, and
By
I
the
think
time this comes out, I'm gonna sound like an idiot, though, because it will have already oh, no, this comes out in March, though. Maybe people
oh,
won't
okay,
know.
before.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I love what you're saying, and that's exactly what we were going for. And it all coalesced in the right way in terms of the directors and the stories. The writers' room was incredible. Like we really found excellent people that had different perspectives, and we all gelled in such a great way. So I mean, that's the kind of stuff that those variables you can't really, plan on, but when they work from Jenny and to Abdullah to then finding me and then us finding the great writers room to then finding the great directors, when it all works like that, it does feel magical. And I think this show is magical. And the cast, I mean, Sagar and Asif, who play the brothers,
I
again,
I had never seen either of them
no,
before, and I was just like, "Wow, amazing." I mean, I think the Sagar guy is gonna be a complete heartthrob.
yeah, he's
Like, his character is so unique, but
Yeah.
I know that guy.
Right.
You know?
Right. Right. And again, that was all in the script. So for me, as when I come in to do a job like this, like to show run, um, my thing is, and I've said this, is that my job is to run the show, right? And so that means everything I do is to support that, and Abdullah's voice, and the actors, and like I look at it like that. Like I have no agenda except I want the best show, and I think that keeps me kind of out of like my own ego and my own what I want. Like I was just pitching as much as like I was curating and guiding, obviously, but I definitely mind melded with Abdullah and what we wanted for this
Okay.
this show to be.
I have 3 questions. One
Mhm.
is, since we're talking about Abdullah, like what did his role end up being as the creator who didn't get to show run it? What did his role end up being on the show?
My partner, he was my partner. We're aligned, lockstep, completely. I would look at him, is this good, is that good, and he would look at me. We had such a deep trust that I you know would never. He knew that what I wanted, what was the best thing, and that he would defer when he thought like, I don't know this, like, you're 20 steps ahead in terms of what this could mean for a character or whatever. And I would say, give me your instincts, because your instincts are going to serve us and they're going to guide us. That would be the North Star for me. And it really worked. And we just, like I said, we just were at Sundance and talking about it. And it's really interesting to talk about a process after it's happened. And you don't, it's like anything, like you kind of aren't really aware that you're doing it in the moment, but then when you look back, you're like, oh yeah, that's why it worked.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's cool. And so I have a question about you, like why you were brought on, but I actually have an answer that I want to ask you the question about. I heard you say to somebody else that you were raised in the mob.
Yeah.
And so like that makes you kind of the perfect fit for a comedy about like people accidentally getting thrown into the middle of the mob, basically,
Yeah.
the Pakistani mob.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to know more about that, because I don't know that I've like got any personal contacts before with anyone who was raised in the mob. So I just
Yeah.
was wondering what you can.
Here's where this goes into the darkness. So I grew up in South Philadelphia. My dad got 2 women pregnant at the same time, didn't marry my mom. So we were already kind of like outsiders. And I'm half Lebanese, half Italian. My mom is Lebanese, but it's an Italian neighborhood. And she married I would say a psychopath. He kidnapped my brother. He burned our house down. I tried to kill him. My company is called Shaky Gun Productions because I tried to kill him. I didn't actually shoot him. The whole idea of Shaky Gun is me as a 12-year-old girl trying to like point a gun at this guy who had taught me how to use the gun. He used to take me out on cons and be his like kind of like paper moon kind of cover. So that was my childhood, right? And then, but I'm in South Philly, and that's everybody's world. Like we were just all. I said this in my meeting with Abdullah and Jenny and Nora for Deli Boys, is that what I would bring to this show is that criminals don't think they're criminals. They don't see themselves as criminals. They just think that everybody has to do what they have to do to get by. And so that's how I was raised. And that's why I think I brought humanity to these characters, because like Lucky, who I loved writing for, she's she's a person that had a tough life and had to do what she had to do to not die. And so while there is
And
a
she
morality,
excelled. I mean, she went above and beyond. Talk about not being a victim and being a survivor.
right.
Like
That's
she
always
was like
been my thing.
next level survivor. Yeah.
That's always what I've said, is like I had to be a survivor because I would not. I refused to be a victim to all this garbage. And so then as I got older, and by older I mean like 13, I started dating. So my family was in the, my dad's family was in the mob, went to jail. My uncles went to jail. My uncle robbed his own bank, his local bank, went into the bank with a gun, and they were like, "Lou, what are you doing? Like, we know you. We
Sorry,
can
that's
identify you."
this is a sitcom. I'm sure you've developed this already, right?
No, I mean, some parts of it are, I take all the, every part of the animal and put it in some things. But I am writing a book called Hit Woman, how growing up in the mob prepared me for a life in Hollywood, which is also
Okay. I will get an advance copy of that.
Yes, you will, for sure. But but my uncle ultimately he did that, I found out later, because he was going to be killed by the mob because he owed them so much money, because he was like a gambler, a loan. Everybody, that's what I'm saying. Everybody was all doing this. We didn't have like lawyers and doctors in South Philly. No, they threw, if you made a lot of money, it was, because you bet a good game or you threw yourself in front of a car. Like, that's how you got by. So I started dating the son of the head of the mob. And that was, it was a dangerous game. And I ultimately had to break up with him because there was accusations that, there was a murder. I can't really even, I still can't really get into the weeds about that. But I then started dating somebody else whose brothers were in the mob as well. And then I was like, I went to Penn, believe it or not. The whole joke was like, I was going to go to Penn or going to wind up in the pen. So to really kind of make a choice. And then I moved to New York. That's when I moved to New York. And I thought, I can't go to any more funerals or get involved in this shit anymore. I knew I needed to get out of there as soon as possible, and I did. But look, I love that I survived it.
It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, like, dating the head of the mob, like, how do you break up with that person? Because, like,
It's not easy.
Is that allowed?
No. Well, he was the son of. By the way, he ultimately became he is very high up in the mob right now. I think he has his own podcast, by the way. I'm not saying. Because everybody has their own podcast. But yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that was one question I had. And then what was the other question I had? I had one more question about this. Oh yeah, you were starting to talk about earlier how, like, when we were talking about the old school guys, and then you started to say, now that I run my own rooms, I do things differently.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel like we ever kind of like got into that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a thing that I think about in terms of now being, running a network show, and, I am at the head of the table, and I'm the mob boss in that room, right? I have to, kind of, I tell everybody, what I think, and they have to listen to me. But I do it with, like, it's not just feminine energy. I don't think it's just that. I really do it with humanity, because I feel like I learned from the worst, and I never wanted to do that same thing where people didn't feel respected, people shut down. And
I feel like when people are scared in a writer's room, they do shut down. And that's the worst thing that can happen. And so I've always wondered, like, what do these people think they're getting out of you when you're just running scared all the time? You're not going to think your best stuff. And if you do, you're probably not going to say it out loud. So you're actually missing out. But what would be like advice you would give to someone who's struggling to like run their room in a human,
Yeah.
less toxic
Well, you have
way.
to respect people. Look, we have to do this job very quickly, like especially in a network scenario. You do a table, you get the script on, and I'm very organized about that because I really don't like to scramble. I like to really think things through and make the story solid. I think that happened a lot with when I was starting out, like they were just like not really thinking characters through. And even in pilots that like I'm like, you didn't do the work. Like, do you know the person's last name? Like, where do they grow up? What is their, I mean, even like, what is their favorite call? Like, do that work so you know who this person is. Like, we did that work. We certainly do that work on, like, I did it on Dollface. I did it on all the pilots that I wrote because I came to it from just a writerly perspective. And I think a lot of those guys in sitcoms, when I first started, came to it from a joke perspective. And I think that was a flaw because these are characters. And, even working with Tim Allen, he is a stickler for authenticity. And, I think that's where we are very, very similar because he wants it to be real. And he really is, I am always surprised at how good of an, and it's funny because of course he's a great actor, but he's a surprising actor because I think he's coming from a real place. And I think that's what I like to do in the writer's room. Like, what's your story? Tell me what is real about it. Let's do real stuff. It can get exaggerated, but it has to start from a real place. But as a showrunner, I would say everybody that is in that room, without exception, even if they're not working out, like, or you're like, oh, this person isn't really right for this job, or that, they have a story to tell. And I think if you scratch a little bit the surface of that person, you can get the like gems out of that person. And that's what I like to do. And I respect the actors too. Like, if an actor doesn't want to do that, fine. I get, like, okay, why? If I won't force anybody to do anything. I just don't think that's right. And I think that that's where people start to get into problems on sets.
So if I may repeat back to you what I heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing is that rather than scolding, you're teaching. And when someone is pushing back on you, you're asking questions.
Yeah, exactly. I'm having a conversation, a respectful conversation in which we are going to find the best version of something, not your version, not my version, the best version of something. And I think that, that's what I want to, cultivate in a room and on a show. And, I think, like, to go back to how different, Deli Boys is from Shifting Gears. Shifting Gears is, like I said, a traditional sitcom and a different, it's a different audience, a different voice. Tim Allen is, a legendary star. Kat Dennings is, obviously I'm obsessed with her. I, professionally stalk her. She can't do a show without me now. Like, she's stuck with me forever. But I think that the reason that, I work with her so much is because we have a relationship in which she trusts me and I trust her, and I know how to work with her. And I think that's really has shown to be a successful combination.
So is that how you came into Shifting Gears? Was it through Kat?
Actually, not.
Multiple Dennings?
Yeah, all the Dennings. Actually, no, because I think I was doing Deli Boys, and I might have been when I heard it announced, and I thought I got a little jealous, like, my girlfriend is like getting married to someone else. And I felt a little, pang of jealousy, but I was happy, obviously, because we had written a pilot for Netflix that together, which didn't go. And so then she got this, and I was like, I know that Kat loves doing sitcoms. I know she does because she's so good at it, and she's such a unicorn in that she's so beautiful, yet, so funny. And I think of her as like a old Hollywood star. And then they asked me to go and do, punch up for the show, and I couldn't. I had gotten COVID like This was like back in the spring. And then there was going to be a change in the who was the showrunner. The creators were not, that didn't work out. And I was like, wow, this was like divine intervention, because I wasn't supposed to be doing this, but it was meant, it seems like it was meant to be. And lacking on what, so far so good. Like, we really are hoping to do, I have a personal, I don't know why, that, kind of a dream that I really do want to make sitcoms come back in a way that people that are like this show, Shifting Gears, is about this guy, Tim Allen's character, Matt, who runs a restoration shop, and they restore classic cars. And again, like I am a stickler for, I'm not a stickler, but like a kind of, I romanticize like themes, and I'm like, that's what I want to do with sitcoms, in that I want to, I want to keep what's great about sitcoms, but I do want to kind of reinvent them a little bit, so that they don't have the stigma that they have had for so long. Because I think people just want to just laugh again, and like we talked about,
I mean,
we
the
just
good
want
ones
comedy.
are still, people still love Friends.
Right,
People still love
right,
Seinfeld. You know what I mean? Like
right. I still watch
when there's so
Seinfeld.
many Norman Lear shows, like when you watch a good sitcom that is, as Tim Allen said, really authentic and grounded in reality of real people with real problems, but then just like dealing with it in a funny way with 3 jokes a page, you
Yes,
know, it it like still it still can be great. It's just a matter of like, having a good characters and good writers and, a good point of view, I guess, on it. So I love your comparison to the refurbishing of these old classic cars. That's so interesting to think about it that way,
it
because like,
is. Yeah, it is, and it is what we're trying to do. Like in terms of like, I try to, you know, the joke, formations are slightly different, and then the music, and then the kind of, all of it. Like I just want it to appeal to people, younger people, but not make it impossible for the people that just want to watch a sitcom to get what they came for.
so, okay, so 2 things. One is you kind of mentioned the first part of what Shifting Gears is about. You didn't yet get to the conflict part of it. So please let us know what the rest of it is about. And then my next question is also, and with Shifting Gears, what are you doing specifically to update it and refurbish it for modern audiences?
Right.
Tim Allen obviously is like a classic car when it
He's a
comes to
classic.
sitcoms.
He's the classic part of this show, and
Yeah.
that is the sort of modern
So yeah, so the
part.
rest of, so what it's about is Tim Allen who refurbishes these classic cars
And he restores cars as well, and sort of thematically again. He is this show is ultimately about the restoration of his relationship with his daughter, played by Kat. And his wife died, and you find out in the pilot that his wife died a year ago, and the wife was sort of this kind of the bridge between the daughter and the father. And she left, she got pregnant and left home, and she's getting a divorce, which is what she says in the pilot, and is needs a place to live, and with her kids. And she comes back into his life, and they need to figure it out together. And it's a very poignant, underneath all of this, which is why, I could write it. We all have daddy issues, and we all have, a lot of people have fractured families. And yes, he has his more age appropriate ideas about how life should be, and she has her age appropriate ideas. And so that generational conflict is there. But also at the core of it is the loss of the mother. She's losing her relationship, so they're in a state of kind of grieving, and they want to connect with each other, but it's hard because they don't get along. So but so to watch that, and they're so good together. I mean, they're just really, I mean, that's the thing about sitcoms and comedies in general, is like that chemistry has to be there. And they have it so magnetically. Um, and so that's what the show is ultimately, like them finding their way back to each other and moving forward in their own lives.
Yeah. So yeah. So what are you doing specifically with the show to sort of like um, make it feel new? Or is it the fact that they're dealing with death rather than just like leaving a wedding on your
Right.
wedding day?
Right. Yeah. No, that was pretty
You
good
know,
too. That was pretty good too. That worked. Um,
that worked.
yeah, no. Uh, that well, it's more in the form than the content that I'm trying to shift the gears of. I am really like, I got like Tony Kanal is our composer, and he is did our main title, so, you know, music. And so I wanted the cues to be more kind of cool. He's from No Doubt. Gabe Hilford is our music supervisor. He does everything, like from White Lotus, like he's like the guy. And just bringing people in like Jenna Elfman and Brenda Song, and like I just want it to be fresh and cool, and I want people to go, but that show's good, like that show's just good, I want to watch it. So that's what I think I'm trying to bring, is a vibrance to it, you know, like in the way that what I think Modern Family did. Modern Family was doing a sitcom in a single camera form. And
Mhm.
I want to do some single camera elements in a multi-camera form. That's like a trick. Is just, you know, we're learning. You know, we're trying to pull again from the best of, you know, what we've learned. I've been doing this a long time. I know what works. I know what I like. And I think I know what people like. I hope so.
Yeah, and so how do you see like some of the smaller characters evolving into this situation too? Because I know you have Strickler from American Pie in there, which everybody loves,
Yeah. He's
and
he was the kind of like the real sleeper in all of this. Like when I came on, that character wasn't there. I came up with that character. It was going to be a brother character to the Riley character, Kat's
Mhm.
character, and obviously Tim's son. And it just wasn't in the pilot that I saw. It just didn't kind of sing. And um, so I thought about another kind of a character, and I love romantic comedies. So I wanted to kind of put that out there, in that this guy was worked for her dad, knew her brother, and was this dream guy who is like really cute, but like kind of hometown boy. And Sean and I talked for a long time about like what the character could be, and then he did it, and everybody like at the table read was just like, oh my god, this guy is so funny, and he's so sweet and earnest, and he's having the best time. Like he's he's never done a sitcom before, and he's brilliant.
That's what I thought. Yeah, when
Yeah,
I was watching, I was like, has he ever done this before? I mean, I've seen
no,
him do a lot of really funny movies.
yeah, no, he's obviously like so like a comedy legend, but he's never done a sitcom, and he is such a natural. And I think that he's having the best time. And then we have Daryl Chill Mitchell, who is, you know, like, you know, that's called money. Like anytime he says anything, you're getting a laugh. So
Yeah.
like, so we have like a workplace comedy too with those two,
Mhm.
and then we have the family comedy with Kat and Matt, and then her kids. These kids, Barrett and Max, are, I don't know. I can't take credit for them, because they were found, and you know, before me, and they are stars. They are stars.
Max was in he was the star of the Mighty Ducks, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so he carried a show before.
Yeah, right. So I never. never saw it, but I didn't. So he was like the star, but he's like a star. He's a star.
Yeah.
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 It's really, so, when you have that, because we just did a show in which the kids were just by themselves in a story, and like, that's like, could be potentially suicide. Like, okay, we can't do that. But they killed it. They killed it. I was like, Tim, watch out, because these kids are taking over the show.
Awesome.
So it's really fun. Like look, it's all hard. It's hard because you want it to be great, and everybody thinks jokes are easy. They're not easy. None of it is, but it's worth it because when people are watching the show and liking it, and that's very rewarding. That in this time, it's so obviously our premiere was the day of the fires.
Oh wow, I
Yeah.
didn't realize that.
Yeah. So it was a really, kind of terrible hellscape of a day in Los Angeles. And, to have our premiere on that day, and we were all just like really, obviously if you live here, what it felt like. And so, it just put aside, but then, then we were like, oh, people were watching it, and, it felt,
It's
felt
just
like
the people who were in charge of promoting it might have been a little distracted by their houses burning down.
Yeah. I mean, and also we were going to have a table read that day, and, so we shut it down. It's just, it's just such a hard time in general that, I guess, I think that's why people are kind of saying this, which is, we just want to like a comedy and we want to laugh.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people have been saying that for a long time, and we just keep getting more and more drama and horror and true crime. And I keep looking at my TV and going, I don't understand why anyone wants to put themselves through this when life is already like a true crime.
Yeah, it really is. Except, I mean, for me, I have to say I like the Menendez brothers.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying that this stuff isn't well done. It's very,
I know. I just
intriguing.
needed to come clean about
Okay.
that I watched.
Okay. No, I mean, I just want to watch comedy all the time, and I don't care if the comedy is super dark, but
Right.
like make me laugh so that I have like so that I at least, know what I can be laughing at. Now,
Exactly.
how big is your writer's room for the sitcom for Shifting Gears?
It's not that big because we only did 10 episodes. So I have Bob Daly is a veteran. He and Jim Patterson are my right hand men. Right, they're just incredible. And Morgan Murphy, who's a stand up comedian, and she, when I get people that are that talented, I kind of just say, you got to come with me everywhere. So she was on Two Broke Girls. I think we've written a pilot together. Yeah, we have. And then I have Saladin Patterson, who's another veteran. He's there. And then Faraz Ozel. And then we have two.
He's still from Deli Boys.
He's from Deli Boys.
Yeah.
And then we have, two staff writers, Clay and Maya, who are, kind of the new kind of layer, that I'm trying to teach. And we have a great, writer's assistant, and, everybody pitches in, like everybody kind of like, everybody gets to pitch. Like, I don't ever say, no, you can't say anything. If they ask me, like, yeah, you can pitch. Yeah, of course.
So when do you find out if you guys are getting more episodes? Shouldn't that be coming?
I guess. I mean, do you know anything?
No, but by the time this airs, we'll probably know. So
yeah, I don't know. I think that we have 3 more episodes to shoot. And so I think, I don't know. I mean, I hear it's doing well. I'm knocking on wood again. I had to get up from the other table to knock on different wood. And so I guess we'll find out soon. I really hope we get a second season. I don't know if they still do full seasons, but that'd be great.
yeah, it would be great if they did full seasons. I think Abbott Elementary gets full seasons.
Yeah.
So if you can get to
yeah, and that's set in Philadelphia too. Quentin and I wrote a pilot together that didn't get picked up, and then she did Abbott. So you see, it all works out the way it should. So that's always the lesson that I've learned is divine timing of like, it may look like, nothing is happening and you have to give up, and then just keep going forward and hopefully it works out.
Well, on that note, I think we have pretty much covered all the big stuff. So, where can people find you on social media?
Oh, it's on Instagram. It's Mish Nader, Michnader, and that's pretty much it. I mean, that's it. You can find me in my house, just staying inside. That's it.
Great. Yeah, I'm at Monique Sorgen everywhere on
I want to hear about your career. I mean, can we do
you? Well, let's get in touch and, we'll definitely chat. I would love that.
I would love to, because I know I wanted to ask you questions, but then I was like, okay, well, I know she wants to ask me questions.
We have a limited amount of time to hear from one of the few people who has 2 shows. So let's learn some stuff. Okay. Anyways, well, thank you so much. This has been Michelle Nader talking about Shifting Gears and the Deli Boys. You have to watch. Shifting Gears is on ABC. I don't want to say that wrong.
ABC and Hulu.
ABC and Hulu the next day, I guess.
Yeah.
And Deli Boys is going to premiere on March 6th, which is my half birthday, so I can remember that date. And that on Hulu and Onyx.
Well, Onyx is a division of but you'll be able to find it on Hulu.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for being with us. And I have been Monique Sorgen in all of this.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Third and Fairfax. You can listen and subscribe to Third and Fairfax on Spotify, Apple, and Libsyn, and watch us on the Writers Guild of America West's YouTube channel. If you like this episode or have a comment, email us at podcast@wga.org. Also check out writtenby.com, the Guild's online publication, for more on writer craft, career, and union life. And see you next time.